Yeah, you can begin. Yeah. Well, last Friday. Water. Thumbs up.
Recording in progress.
Roll call, please.
Cindy? Here. David?
Here.
Todd?
Here.
Andrew?
Here.
And Crystal?
Here. First period for public comment. Anybody out there want to make a public comment? Yeah. Are you on the agenda? Oh, hi, Linda. How about online? Anybody want to speak during public comment? Okey doke. Approval of committee minutes from April 23rd, 2024.
This is Crystal. I'd move approval.
Is AJ, I'll second.
Approval or a motion by Crystal, second by AJ. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Discussion on sewer rate increase. Is that a Sarah thing or a Cheryl thing?
It is a me thing. So this is just going to be brief. Last month or last Public Works meeting, we had the committee had asked me to come back with a 7% increase and then maybe doing some annual increases for the next 5 years. So I started working on that. I talked with Sarah and we decided that we wanted to, before I went into too much work, we really wanted to find out how far Johnson and Black was on the increase we had asked them to do over a year ago. Because the increases I was doing was enough to get us to the point where if they had a bigger increase, we wouldn't have such a big increase. So I contacted the auditors. Melanie is doing the review and she hasn't gotten back to me yet. So I don't really have anything new. I believe that we really should wait until I would hate to do this all annual stuff with, and then having her come back and say, oh, well, you need to do more or you need to do less, projecting, other debt payments out, et cetera. So for now, I think we're going to hold off and then I'll come back next time and give you another update.
Anybody have any questions? I think I said 4%, but maybe Crystal said 7%. I don't know.
I get 7%.
Oh, okay. I was trying to take the lower of the increases.
I do have one question. If we get one shot at this a year, so it's not like
No.
we could do something that was incremental.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. So, we try not to have too many sewer increases and the reason, we need to start looking at doing these smaller ones annually, like we do the water. The water you can do at any point in time of the year, but you have to have at least 12 months between the last increase and the next increase. And you can't do it between the months of February 1st and April 30th.
Really?
So
Really?
yes, because that's when everybody's getting their annual reports in. And so they're setting the the water increase for next year, for the next 12-month period, because the PSC sets those rate increases if you go for a simplified rate increase.
Okay.
And they want to wait rather than having old numbers to use. They want the most current numbers and their annual reports due May 1st. So on May 2nd, they open up the portal. So I did go on at May 2nd. We do qualify, but I've been still trying to work on the sewer thing first. So next Public Works meeting, I'll be bringing back the water rate increase request.
Okay, well, that makes sense. It's nice to hear something that's logical like that.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. Discussion with possible action on salt shed construction. Is that
We're
Chad
gonna
gonna talk?
Do
or-
it together.
Okay.
So obviously this isn't the first time we talked about it and we're trying to figure out like what we need to do moving forward. And with the next agenda item, let me think, it's the next number 7. This kind of precludes that in the sense that some of the borrowing that is happening, I'll let Nate explain, impacts us and they're asking for numbers now. So I want to keep you up to date about what we're doing. And we haven't really gotten too terribly far from where we were at last time, but we didn't actually get to present last time because we ran out of time. So I am going to share the screen. Okay, just so that you can look at some of the options. So one of the options that we looked at, and we haven't made any decision about what we would like to present. Let me make sure I'm not sharing that yet, am I? Okay, this is one of the things that we've looked at here is like the span building where there's different kinds of construction that you can look at, but it's like a fabric covered metal structure. You see this around various places. Chad, do you ever remember where we've seen it?
That building in particular is Jackson County up in Black River Falls. Todd actually went up and looked at that, and so did I and Mark.
And there's different versions, right? So we can look at having it on blocks. We can have it on piers, which I didn't open. Hold on one moment. Something more like this, that's more of like a permanent structure. We have yet to decide whether we want this kind of format. However, what we do know, which is important for what we're talking about today, is what are we talking about for cost, right? So this would replace both of our salt and sand structures that we currently have instead of just a single one. So this is just for the building itself, right? So the $233,750, and then we'd still need to be able to have concrete pad and other things, grading, that kind of thing that we need related to it. And then there was like an alternate bid with just that different like pier structure, and you're adding another 30,000. So we are certainly in the $300,000 range for a building and everything that we need to do around it. So the other option that we talked about was doing something that's more like what we have now, except having a concrete base. So it was the town of Sterling, right? See, Cousins Concrete built that in 2017. And so I was trying to get them to give us some numbers about what would be looking at in today's dollars, right? Because unfortunately, it's not the same amount of money anymore. And the reason we'd ask them is because they would do they do both the building and the concrete work, which is what is a component of looking at a building like that. The one that we have now does not have like the concrete walls. And so that's most of our damage that we're getting is like where the salt is touching the wood. And so he gave me in 2017, it was around $100,000. So giving, and they went to Menards and got the plans for it. So like very unlikely we'd be able to get away with that version of state plans. And so we times it by a whole bunch of factors. And so it got us close to 200,000, 225 is what we're thinking it would cost to do something like that. And Chad, if you want to add anything, feel free, but that's really all that I was updating you on today.
So that 233,000 on here, that's basically a hoop building that is about 110% the size of what we have. It's not much bigger as far as like growth. The buildings we have down here were built in the 80s. City of Viroqua was smaller. we have had times where they have to go out and break into the sand pile in the middle of the winter, which isn't desirable to refill it because we've used up our stockpile. That extra 27,000 there is for, it's an extra 16-foot addition. So instead of 700 tons of salt, it goes to 840. And instead of, I think it was 1,800 tons of sand, it goes to 2,225. That would be, if I was gonna go with a hoop building, I would say that would be more what you'd want. So it'd be like 260,000, but that price does not include finishing the ground at all. Whether it's blacktop pad or a concrete pad floor, that's not in there. So like Sarah was saying, it's 300,000 for that project, for that type of building.
Sorry, I had forgotten that was also there. Cause that was the other option,
Mhm.
was to put it.
And
on
so
block,
then
that's
that-
slightly different.
That 235, that's, you saw those big concrete blocks that they use to make bins, and that's the $235,000 option. But again, that's for the smaller tonnage, which is basically what we have for capacity. So we'd have to go with the extra 18,000 on top of it. So you're at 254, 53. And that still doesn't include a floor, site prep. So that's gonna be 300,000 for those two options.
Are y'all leaning towards the other one then?
So I guess just everybody knows Wisconsin salt and steel, you try and keep them apart. These, you're putting salt and steel right next to each other.
Like for the other one?
I would, it's
Okay.
more, I think durable. Just because a tarp in the winter, if it gets flap, or not even the winter, a tarp in the wind gets flapping, pretty soon it's loose,
So,
it tears. Now you're,
well, that kind of tells us where.
but
Yeah, but we're certainly in that over $200,000 mark, I
Right.
guess, in terms of budgeting. But I guess the benefit, as opposed to our original look, was that we were only looking at doing one of the two buildings. So this is taking care of both of the buildings, which they both have been hit for deficiencies structurally from the DOT inspectors, which we know we need to replace. We just, again, have been waiting for knowing what our future is, which now we know we have the property north of the shop. And we're, based on looking at estimates of a new building, going to be there for a good 10 years. So now it's time to move forward with getting the salt shed taken care of.
So it's possible action. Do we,
Don't need to do anything. This was it for information.
okay. Okay, thank you. Discussion with possible action on special charge for sewer lateral repair for 520 East Avenue.
Well, I must say, I'm very proud of our ability to get information out, because I had talked about this with the plumber, and I did not call Linda to tell her that she was gonna be on the agenda today, but she saw it on the internet. So it was, yeah. Good luck that she was able to see that. So, okay, so this is a property that we have been, going back and forth with for a number of years. That's had a lot of problems with the sewer lateral. And part of the issue is the length of the sewer lateral. I should share with, sorry, I can pull up the GIS to give you the best explanation of the situation here. Okay. All right. So we're talking about Linda's property. Woo. I wish I had better control of it. The property here, right, exactly. Getting right up in there. And trying to get layers out of the way for myself here. And our sanitary manhole is at the intersection here of Oak and East Avenue. So that meant that her sewer lateral actually goes all the way from the property, all the way through the front yard, essentially boulevard area of the neighbor, all the way, and it connects just outside of this manhole. With a long service. And it's been years Right, Linda, like it's been that you've had problems with your sewer there.
Hey, Linda, can you go up to the podium, please? Can you go up to the podium so they can hear you online and,
Yeah, you get to be online.
yeah.
Yeah, well, it's been like a couple of years with the sewer, with the roots coming up in the pipes. And the plumber told me that my pipes are fine from the house until it gets down to where that tree is, right where the roots are coming in.
Yeah, that's where
Is-
he's saying that it's blocking right there.
Right.
So, well, the first request was to fix the sewer and remove the tree, but we don't take responsibility for tree roots because the reason they get in is because the sewer is compromised.
Okay, but you guys, the city planted the tree.
Well, that's not actually, we're not 100% sure that that's the case. But it doesn't matter because it's even if it's in the boulevard.
And it is, yeah.
doesn't matter.
Not on her property.
Yeah, well, it's,
She shouldn't be handling that
that's
tree.
just the way the city policy is. We do not replace any sewers related to tree roots. It's because the sewers are compromised in order for the tree roots to
Yeah,
get
but the
in.
tree was
Wait,
in-
excuse me. Excuse me.
Well, there would be,
That's a
You-
problem.
Sir,
You got
sir,
it.
you need to go to the microphone. The chair is asking you to go to the microphone. If you're going to speak, go to the microphone.
so because the tree roots get in sewers because the sewers are compromised and the tree roots find the water that they want. And so we do not remove trees and we do not replace sewer lines because of tree roots in the city. However, we do obviously know that the sewer is backing up there and that water is getting in because that's how like the sewer is compromised there. So we are not, our ordinance requires that you are not allowed to have clear water come into the sewer. And so the sewer does need to be repaired. And we are able, because of where where the tree is at the worst part, we are able to cut the tree down so that because they need to get in there to repair the sewer. So we've got the sewer and the repair that needs to happen. And again, we, as a part of our ordinance, we're not allowed to have clear water enter the sewer. So a compromised sewer is not permitted. And so working with Strang, which is the plumber that you're using, he gave an estimate of how to repair it. And the cost was $3,662.24. And so the question that was brought forward, or the reason that we have the agenda item, was that in order to help fund this, because the city won't finance it, but to help her pay for the cost, typically we've used in the past a special assessment. And I would have proposed that, although for a whole nother reason, we started having conversation with the city attorney about special assessment uses versus special charge. And he says that this needs to be a special charge, not a special assessment. And we use special charge for our sidewalk cleaning. We also use special charge for charging for water and try that again. Garbage and recycling charges are special charges. And so when I asked him how to proceed with this, he said, you should just proceed with it like you would a special assessment, get approval for it, and then it can be applied in the same way. So that's why we're here today. It was to be able to help her provide her a way to pay for the sewer bill. So
what's the difference, pardon me, but what's the difference between special charge and special assessment?
So a special assessment is supposed to be used in situations where, like, we extend a sewer main, something that's a publicly owned part of the system.
Okay.
So a sewer main, for example, would be a publicly owned part, but we still might assess the property adjacent to pay for the sewer extension. A sidewalk extension, the sidewalk is in the city right of way. It is owned by the city technically, but the homeowner is responsible. But in that situation, because it's a public facility, and it also a special assessment. But if it's private property, it has to be a special charge.
Is it any different in the law?
Not
And
what
it's just the
anyone can
name?
tell me. Because I've been going back and forth. I was like, how you can't take this special tool that we have away? We've done, I mean, we have special assessment for sewers in multiple places in town. And so this is just kind of cleaning up what we've done in the past so that it should be a special charge versus the special assessment.
The terms have been used interchangeably, but there are a difference and it's just kind of on the backside. We've always done that. And normally these are done by resolution. So if this goes forward, would say at the council, we should have a resolution that specifies how much the interest is and all of that information just going forward. So.
Yeah. Well, and we can do this. I was mimicking this off of when we did it for DeFreeze. If you remember, we did that for that property. I think it was 1055 DeFreeze to get that sewer situation resolved. So this is what I'm proposing, was to be able to give an avenue to get the work done. Obviously, the removal of the tree would be at the city's cost because we take care of street boulevard trees.
So that's someone else's tree?
Well, it's in the boulevard.
Yeah.
And there's question as to whether or not the city actually planted it, but it's in the boulevard. So we take care of things that are in. The
I talked to
boulevard.
Gloria McGuire, that's the tree we're talking about, and she did say that they did plant the tree.
So I assume that's the only way we can go. We can't go the short way to the street. We have to go the long way, the way it is now.
Well, so there is no sewer
Yeah,
in front
okay.
of her property, which
Okay.
is why that service is so long.
Yeah.
So there's no option to go a short way. That is the short way. Yeah.
I have
Uh,
a question.
Yes, go ahead.
When the city plants these trees on the boulevard, why aren't they held liable for the damage that's done to like her sewer line and everything? And sometimes they're planted under the high lines and grow up in the high lines. Aren't they liable for damage to any of that?
We do not take any responsibility for sewer lines. And the reason is because the sewer has to be compromised for the tree to go into the.
Do
sewer.
they have to have a permit to have them planted in the person's?
Well, the person that planted it should have got a tree planting permit. Obviously, that was not the case. We're assuming that we wouldn't have allowed a tree like that to be planted, but it's very challenging to know what happened 30 years ago. I mean, we're just going based on trying to figure out the best plan forward.
So when they're gonna do this repair, are they gonna do from that tree down below?
So
Not
yeah,
even
I was
have to
worked
blend
with
those
Ed about what
section up there, cause that apparently is okay.
Yeah, the
Why,
sewer-
way I understand it.
yeah, we don't want to have to go in the street if at all possible, because that will make this cost
Oh,
3
yeah.
times more.
Right.
So he knows that the line is bad from that area. He doesn't know exactly that it's under the tree. He thinks it's a little ahead of the tree, but it's related and it needs to be removed in there for them to get into to excavate properly. What it sounds like was that when we talked with Ed, because Greg, the utility superintendent and myself met him out there, was that we would add a flush out so that it helps for clearing this out in the future. And so basically it would probably be like somewhere in her yard until they hit the section in which the blockage is. And he will know once he's there. Like he's not 100% sure exactly where the damage is. And because he can't get his camera all the way through.
Right.
It hits water pretty shortly after your property. So again, I mean, this is, I think the best case scenario for everybody. We can take care of the tree, the cost of removing it, and help Linda out with being able to get this paid for and move forward. So yeah, as Lori mentioned, we'd have to get a resolution together. And I'm assuming you would want it for the entire amount, the 36.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we need to take it to the council next Tuesday.
Anyone have any further questions? Want to make a motion
Want to make a motion to move it forward? The
with
council
the resolution?
You have any
with the
questions?
resolution?
Todd will second it.
Is that enough, Lori?
No,
A resolution for a special charge for sewer lateral repair?
Do you know how many years we're talking here?
Yeah, well, that's usually, I think the special assessment was 5
5.
years for 4.
I just want to make sure that when we're doing the resolution.
Yeah.
That we're stating the percentage of, and then we're using the same percentage of interest as in the sidewalk stuff.
That was what this going forward with what was precedent was.
Okay,
my
I just
plan.
want to double check because that probably should be part of the motion. Is if you're going to move forward with it at 5 years at
5 years at 4% interest. Correct?
Okay, we have motion by David, second by Todd. Is that okay with you, the change, Todd?
Yes.
Okay. That sounds like a roll call vote to me.
David.
Aye.
Todd,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
Crystal,
Aye.
and Cindy.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Linda. Yep. Discussion with possible action regarding financing for street department projects 2024.
Let me just make sure I have the right spreadsheets here. Oh, okay, folks. So as has been indicated on the agenda, what we're talking about here is street projects in general for 2024. The spreadsheet that is before you is basically sort of the breakout of all bonding we'd be looking to do here in 2024. So the first three projects highlighted in yellow are my best guess as to what would go as part of the initial promissory note. And before we get into that, I'll just kind of go through the project. So of course we have the fire station project. Based on the bids and contingency concerns, I think the total ask for that project is going to be 3.44 million. The salt shed, as Sarah has brought out today in an early agenda item, they're looking at around the $300,000 range. And so that amount there of 205 is the difference between 300 and what was borrowed for this project way back in 2021 when we originally intended to do it. However, we were pausing because the North Point project started to take off and we were not sure exactly how that was going to shake out in terms of which land they were going to use. Were they going to use the land that we ended up receiving on the north end of the where the current public workshop is? And now that that project has shaken out and obviously they've demonstrated a need for the project, that money can be used. But as Sarah's noted, originally when they looked at the project, it wasn't nearly the same scope, right? It expanded to also being a sand shed, right? The TAP project, right? So this is Main Street, downtown specifically. The $230,000 is essentially what is expected to be expended throughout this year. So basically, it's January 1 of this year to the project finish at the end of the year. That's the amount of money, and that would be levied against TID 6. And this has always sort of been the plan for the Main Street TAP project, is it would be a borrowing project against TID 6. Okay. Main Street and Decker, this is the portion that includes the demo of the building and the correction, the additional money needed to correct the corner. That $222,000 is essentially the project budget less the $200,000 we allocated to ARPA at the last council meeting. Okay, so that's sort of the balance to finish the project. And then the last three projects are the police department projects. These were all approved as part of the 2024 budget. And as part of the 2024 budget, we had identified they'd be end of year borrowing projects. Okay, so that is sort of the extent of our capital projects that we intend to borrow for this year. What we are hoping to do this year is take advantage of the fact that the the fire department project came in considerably lower than what our worst case scenario was. And so our worst case scenario was around 3.875 that we thought we might have to borrow for the project on top of the grant and on top of the contributions from the township. The project itself came in considerably lower, and we're feeling at this point that only 3.44 million will need to be borrowed, which leaves an excess amount that we can spend on other projects. And since we're going to have to borrow for those other projects anyway, why not slide them into this debt issuance? Okay, because one way or another, they're going to get borrowed for. The general sense is the bigger your bond issuance, the more attractive it is to bidders and the higher chance that we're going to get a good term on it, right? So the thought would be is to leave the bond issuance for the what's called the 2024A promissory note at the full amount of 3.875. This amount would be used to fund the fire station, and then the remaining amount would be used to fund these street projects. Now, it should be noted that, as Sarah pointed out today, is that they're still trying to identify what exactly the cost is going to be for the salt shed project. They're still doing research. And so the nice thing about doing the promissory notes is that we don't really need to define exactly what project it is that we're going to be doing. Essentially, we can say is we're going to spend this much money on the fire department, and the rest of the money will go towards financing street projects throughout 2024. Okay. Now, if that means Main Street and Decker happens first, then that money can be allocated towards that, and we can kind of pivot as we see the numbers come through. But ultimately, we are going to have to borrow again at the end of the year. And that was sort of always the plan, right? Because we had these projects here, particularly the squad car, would not make sense to be put into the 2024 promissory note because a squad car has a lifespan of 5 years. And you wouldn't want to put a squad car into a 20-year borrowing note because you would have bought 4 more squad cars by the time you would have paid the one off, right? So the idea would be is to everything in yellow, try to finance as part of this first issuance that should be reviewed and approved at the next council meeting. And then the last 3 would be done end of year. Or I'm sorry, the last 4 would be done end of year. And again, those street projects can kind of mix and match until they hit the total. But what's important is that we have cash on hand to start paying pay requests once those pay requests start coming in. So I will pause there for questions.
Okay, say the other projects take more money than we anticipated this time, then what happens at the end? Do we postpone those projects?
Not necessarily. You could, of course, there's all sorts of options available to you to pivot and make different decisions based on when actuals come in. You could borrow more at the end of the year. If you want to cover those projects, you could just pay for more things with cash so that the street projects are going to be levied against TID 6. And we do that in order to keep cash on hand in TID 6. But you could just use some of the cash that is sitting there with TID 6, although that is not in as good of a position as we thought it was for reasons to be explained later. Essentially, money was being identified as being in TID 6 when really it was part of the general fund. And so when we go to council next week, we'll look at all that, but those will have to be a consideration. But in general, this is kind of the approach to pay for things. And again, some of these projects like the TAP project and Main Street and Decker, we've been talking about, TAP project, we've been talking about for 3-4 years now. Main Street and Decker, we've been talking probably about every 2 months since last July, right? So at some point the bills are come due, and I think the pay requests from CNC have already showed up for the demo of Old City Hall. So again, that would be part of what's being, I think we allocated that to ARPA funds, but Main Street and Decker includes the demo, the electrical box move, all sorts of things. And so collectively, that project is going to cost, I think what's up there around $422,000, and will be paid approximately 60-40 between the TID and ARPA funds.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a question?
Salt and sand shed, I don't think we can put off. That sand shed down there is in tough shape. The sides are going to go one of these first days. They should rise. They haven't let loose yet.
Yeah. And again, this is showing the salt shed being part of the first issuance, but it's almost a little misleading because it doesn't have to be like that. And the only reason I did that is because the TAP project that we expect to spend this year and the salt shed additional money we would need somehow or another neatly fits right into the vacancy that the fire station left open for them. And so it's just simply a matter of convenience. But you could end up paying for instead 205,000 of the Main Street and Decker correction out of this promissory note. So I think once I get to council, I'll actually condense these down into one street project financing. So.
Okay, so you're looking for approval for the financing for the street department project or what?
Yeah, I think we're just looking for just a recommendation to move forward with the plan and as shown up here. And acknowledging that it may not happen exactly like this as regards to what street project that finance.
Anyone want to make a motion to that effect?
Well, this is Crystal, and I would move that we proceed with presenting this to the council. And this being the plans for payment on the fire station local share, the salt shed, the tap project, Main Street Decker, police canine dog, police canine squad car, and speed boards as defined in this graph. I don't, that doesn't
I'm
help.
not getting that specific on.
Yeah.
I'm gonna move
Okay.
forward with financing plan as discussed. And I will add that later.
This is Todd. I'll second it. Whenever Chris.
Motion by Crystal, a great motion by Crystal. That was very thorough.
I was just glad you guys approved the minutes from the last meeting because I was in such trouble in that.
Second by Todd. Roll call, please.
Todd.
Aye.
Andrew.
Aye.
Crystal.
Aye.
Cindy.
Aye.
And David.
Aye.
Okay, motion approved. Evaluation and selection of engineering firm for construction engineering Main Street tap project.
Okay, so if you remember, we have Strand and Associates that's done the design for the tap project, and we're also including the modifications to the intersection in that contract as well. They're actually two separate parts, but the same bid-ish, I'll say. They're maneuvering it so it can all happen together. Because part of the funding for, well, all of the funding for the construction engineering services is coming from the TAP project, which was not how we originally planned. They ended up giving us additional monies later in which we had added that. And so we need to go through the process of the consultant selection through a qualification-based selection process, which means they can't give us numbers. We have to go purely based on qualifications. And so we put out a solicitation. I sent it to, I was really worried actually we weren't going to get any proposals because it's so late in the game and it's not a very big contract. And so I thought, oh, great. What are we going to do? So I sent it to every consultant on the DOT's consultant list. We got 5 proposals, which I am very impressed with. And that's actually a really nice number. I like that number. It keeps it manageable. And then we had originally put in the proposal that we would have interviews, but the more that I thought about it, I'm like, this takes your time, it takes their time. This isn't that complicated. All we're looking at is which projects they've done before and who's on the staff and like what their experience is. And so that's what I had shared earlier today. I don't know if you guys got the email, but we ended up getting the 5 proposals in, and let me just here pull up what we had. And so we had a proposal. Let's see if I can do this in order. Cedar Corp ended up presenting a proposal. And they had a nice brochure. It's got lots of fancy graphics, right? They're trying to catch your eye. Then we had ISG, which is an engineering firm that we haven't had any experience with, but is in the local area. We had a proposal from Core, which is, I would say, newer in the area. So I should have got this up to the top before I put them all up. So I was impressed that they spent the time to come to town, but then I also finally realized that they actually are already in town for another project. So I mean, still good, but I thought maybe they had driven all the way from Toma just to take pictures. Team Engineering, And again, I've got you at the very bottom. So that's an outfit out of Reedsburg. They've been around for a long time. And lastly, we had a proposal from Viroqua. And that is our engineering firm that's done a lot of our road projects. So in order to make this, again, even easier, because like I said, there's a lot here, but it's not a lot. Like, it's not like other times where we've had them present, how would you approach the project? Like, that's not a part of what they've submitted on. It's just literally qualifications. So I put this all together. Oh, I closed the file. Darn it. I always seem to do that. I put this all together in a spreadsheet for you to summarize what I thought of all of what we saw. And in my summary, and I can go through, there was like Cedar Corp. They had a lot of experience. Every company had a lot of experience. There was nobody that came through that was like, just showed up last year. You know, these are all well-established companies. Cedar Corp had a lot of DOT experience, but it was mostly bridge and structures. And they did have some ADA compliance curb ramps, but they weren't necessarily with big DOT projects, and they did some traffic coordination. ISG, and that's why I highlighted the two in green, because I felt like those were the two we should really have the most conversation about. Again, lots of experience, and these guys were like right exactly on what we are talking about doing. It was like they've done neighborhoods, downtowns, basically bump outs with colored concrete, moving traffic signals, like pretty much exactly what we're doing here. So good experience. They are working on a DOT project on Alaska, and as soon as, if they were hired, as soon as we start, they would move the guy here. And I will say that the one nice thing that I thought out of this one was that the person who they proposed to be here was the guy that had the experience with all of this stuff. Core was the next one, and they also had a ton of associated experience. However, it was kind of more disjointed in the sense that like some people had experience with traffic signals, and another person did a lot of road work with DOT, but it was like, you know, bigger highways. Like they did the coordination of the resurfacing south of town here that happened a couple of years ago. So they had all of, like, they checked all the boxes and had great experience. I think they'd be really good too. But it wasn't necessarily that the person that was here was the person that had all of those different things. And so that was one thing I noted. So like I said, the other group's out of La Crosse. This group's out of Toma, but they're actually the ones doing the Westby project, which I will say I have been impressed at the communication that Westby's project has had, better than I've seen them have before. And so they're the ones that are helping communicate. And so they're also going through the similar process of like big project on Main Street, helping businesses manage the impact, right? Because during this project, there won't be any parking on Main Street. There'll be parking on adjacent, but there won't be parking on Main Street for the project. And obviously they're familiar with Viroqua because their office for the Westby project's in Viroqua. So, you know, they're close. Team engineering, again, another one of those, like they've been around forever, but I would say that of all the projects, there are a lot of like rural road DOT work, not necessarily the same kinds of things that we're looking for, but they have worked in Vernon County, and they have a Reedsburg office. And Viroqua, who has done phenomenal work for us. I would say if we were to add a third that was green, I would say it would be Viroqua. But because we're looking specifically at qualification-based selection, they didn't have the same amount of experience with like directly related projects like the other two did. So we do need to remember we've done this before where we like rank 1 to 5, and I wanted to just do it as a committee. And I left it blank because these are the decisions that we can make and talk about what we want to do here. But I think for the purposes, we can just rank the 2 or 3 that you would like to look at. So are you comfortable with the 2 that I have selected, or do you want to also walk through the ranking process for a third
ISG and
core.
core work for us, right?
And my recommendation and the almost exactly the same amount of split in terms of weight that we've used before. We had used a 35 here last time we did this and I think it was 15 here. So I would recommend using the weight of 30 on what the background and experience of the people are that are working on the project, 40% for a similar project experience, 10 on the capacity to do the work because everybody's offering to do it because they have the availability, their familiarity with the area and the location of where they're at. So if everybody's comfortable with that, we can go through and this process and rank them. Okay.
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Like Veerbecker, they've worked in Viroqua a long time. They're not have the qualifications these other two have.
I would say they'd be number 3 if I was to look at how they look with experience. I trust them implicitly. They do excellent work. So I think that would be, if we were to look at that, and we could certainly put them in like the location and the familiarity of the project, they just wouldn't weight as much, but that's why we can certainly add them. I think it's a quick exercise and we can do that. I hesitated putting the third in or not, and I think it's certainly justifiable that we add that. So let's do that. If I can. Okay. All right, so I would say that all 3 would have, in terms of professional background and caliber of previous experience, I would say ISG most definitely hit all of the mark, and core of the people that are listed certainly have all of the mark. And I would say Veerbecker probably would be a 4 or a 5 in terms of what they have for background and experience of the personnel, probably 5. So if you're comfortable with that, I'll put those recommendations in. Okay. All right, recent experience on similar projects. Like I mentioned, ISG just knocked it out of the park with having pretty much the exact experience for the project that we're looking for. So if you guys are comfortable with me putting a 5 there, I would say that that would be certainly appropriate. And then core, they, like I said, collectively, all had different projects that were similar. I don't know that they had one that met all of them. They had a good one that was in West Allis that had the colored concrete and the changes of the intersection, but they didn't have changes to the signals and things like that, but they didn't have the bump outs, for example, just small differences, but nothing major. So I would say that you're probably at a 4 or a 5. There's
4.
any
4.
4. Okay. Veerbecker, like I mentioned before, they're our bread and butter for our full reconstruction projects, and they certainly do a really good job about helping connect with community, the community as a whole. Todd can attest to the relationships that they've built with the community. So I certainly think they have a lot of experience in that, right? Maybe not so much of the exact kind of projects, but they do have ones that were close. So I would probably say a 4 would be a good number for them. 4. Great. Okay. I think this next one's easy. All 3 of them said they can be there for the schedule that we've set. So I think we can put 5s for all of those. Whoops. Familiarity with the area of the project. I would say, possibly S or ISG would have, like they are familiar with Vernon County and La Crosse and Onalaska, but they've never done a project in Viroqua or like Westby. I think the closest one was nope, that was for Cedar Corp. They were, in their area, but not specifically for us. So maybe a 3 or a 4. Any recommendation?
4.
4. All right. And then, like I said, Core is literally in town right now. They've never worked for us directly, but they've worked on projects in Viroqua and they're working on Westby. So I think that's about as good as it gets around here.
5 and 5.
Yeah. And Veerbecker is like a 10, but
Yeah.
unfortunately we got 1 to 5. Okay. And like I said, for these, like if they're not in town, they're going to be in La Crosse, Toma or Viroqua, and then Reedsburg. So I mean, I feel like those are all about as good as you get for local as well. Like, so I would put 5 for all of those.
Okay.
All right. So that'll
Looks like we have
put,
a tie.
pardon.
We have yeah.
So it still does bring ISG high because of the fact that there's so much weighted on the recent experience.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. And I'll do the math, but that's what it works out to
Okay.
be. So, and so we go through this exercise because this is something that we need, because when we get asked, like, why did you pick X? We have to say, this is why. And so this would go on to recommendation to council. But again, we would be the selection committee. And so this was what I will provide to the DOT as support as to why we chose them.
So you want a motion?
Yes, please.
Doing all the work. I guess.
I was torn between ISG and Core. I think they both do a really good job. I honestly think anyone on the list would have done a good job for us. They're all well versed, but those two seemed like this was kind of their bread and butter, where with ISG, it just seemed like it was such a fit. Like even the proposal they had like the DOT commenting on how they were so impressed with them. So I think we're in good hands.
We're gonna make the motion, Todd? You don't have to. You don't have to.
This is AJ. I'll make a motion that we move forward with ISG for the development of the TAP project.
Sounds good. Motion by
Todd, I'll
AJ.
second it.
Motion by AJ, second by Todd. Guess you want a roll call for this or just a no? Okay. Oh, that's true. All in
Oh,
favor signify by saying aye.
I'll do
Aye.
that.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Okay, we've got 9 minutes. Street department update. Chad, did you want to say something?
So we're out with the street sweeper, doing compost and garbage or compost yard waste collection, which is consuming 2 days a week right now with the volume. We started large area mowing today. We got the John Deere and the brush hog out, patching holes, grinding stumps, dirt work. From the stumps we had ground, we got dirt work in and doing seeding. One other comment, we've got the fuel barrel was delivered today. So it's going to get filled tomorrow and we're moving on with having our own fuel.
There was compliments in the end of West Maple Street for the work that you guys did with blacktop and picking up the chunks of blacktop that had broken off. So if you could pass that on. Thank you.
That reminds me, I have a cute little card from the Montessori Children's House for you guys. It's been on my desk and I keep forgetting to give it to you. Okay. Well, quick things. I did want to get to finally say out loud because last meeting we never had it. That DOT application we made for the MSID program, one of the grants, we ended up getting a $932,000 grant. So that's for South or Center Street. And that's about a third. So we're a good way there. That's a good start.
Good job, Sarah.
Thank you. It made me like, oh, good, because there's a lot of grants out there right now. Main Street tap. So we are literally on the last leg of what I need to do with the DOT, at least for a while. And unfortunately, it's cleaning up a title that the hospital had for one of their land purchases from 2009. why it involves us is just silly, but it's the process. So that is currently what we're working on. And I will say that the hospital is doing their best to get that resolved. I'm meeting with Trina and Nate tomorrow, and we're getting a PR plan together for the information about the project because we want to start making sure people are clear about what's happening. So I put together some images to help people understand what's going to happen in the end, and then like how the traffic patterns will be in the interim. And the last quick thing I'm trying to say is the bike and pedestrian plan. So they've been crunching all the data. We had Joy help us out, which was awesome. And we're getting to the point where we're going to go back to the steering committee and present the information that we have. So I think it's some really good stuff. So to be continued.
Do you want the paperwork back from that she, the number of paper she was using to input?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. 6 minutes. Is it Cheryl's turn?
Sure.
5 minutes.
Sorry, I always check in with Greg. So Greg says flushing this week and next, doing inspections and transmitter changing, trying to clean sewers, and they've got 25% done. We are hiring into one of the utility auxiliary worker positions. The gentleman just had greener pastures elsewhere with insurance and wages. So we've been posting that. You guys would have all seen that go out, and we're working on trying to move quickly with that because we often lose good people in the time it takes us to get through our process. And well 6 is up and running, and it appears like we did have some good come out of it all.
Yay,
So yeah. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Okay, I'm just going to be working on the DNR service line spreadsheet and trying to get a little more information in that. The water rate increase to bring forward for the next time we meet. Hopefully I'll have some answers on the sewer increase and just some regular annual reports that we'll be bringing forward, the CMR and the CCR early June.
Can you go into a little more detail on the DNR spreadsheet to refresh everyone's memory?
Oh, it's on the service lines on the property side and the street side of all of our properties within the city of Viroqua that we service through the water utility.
You're trying to find if lead pipes or...
Right. It's the EPA is requiring this, and we're running it through, Wisconsin's running it through the Wisconsin DNR. So each water utility has to report service line, street side and property side by October 16th.
And you're getting pretty good cooperation from people?
Yeah, actually we are. So it's been good.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think we're ready for second period for public comment. David, still your chance. No? Anyone online want to make a comment? No one's jumping at the bit. Okay, adjournment. Motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
This is AJ, I'll second.
Motion by Todd, second by AJ. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.